Take a look at this chart. This shows the Rotten Tomatoes audience rating of Disney's original animated movies. This is the rating of the live-action remakes. As we can see, of the 13 remakes, only 3 were rated higher by audiences than the original, with some scoring significantly lower ratings than the originals. But despite this, Disney looks set to keep going with this strategy, considering that 6 more live-action remakes have already been confirmed. And according to unproven rumors, Disney actually has 50 live-action remakes in its pipeline. But why? Why does Disney keep making these movies despite major backlash from its fans? And what problems might this strategy bring in the future? Disney's live-action remakes have become the source of a conspiracy theory. If you go online, you might have come across posts that claim that the reason Disney keeps on remaking these classics, despite the backlash, criticism, and bad reviews, is because remaking them is a way to extend the copyright of their IPs. Many believe this theory because Disney has indeed released some remakes a few years before the original film is scheduled to go into public domain. Take Snow White. The original film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, is set to go into the public domain in 2033, so Disney releasing a live-action remake in 2025 to extend the IP kind of makes sense. However, this is not the case. US copyright law does not allow for copyright to be extended in this manner. Creating new adaptations or versions of a work does not extend the copyright of the original. Instead, each version holds its own separate copyright. This means that, starting from January 1, 2033, the original film and its specific elements, such as character designs, dialogue, and music, will be free for public use without requiring permission from Disney. The 2025 live-action remake of Snow White does not affect this timeline. But there is a much simpler explanation of why Disney keeps remaking these movies. Money. Disney's classic animated films are quite literally cultural artifacts. Most people grew up with these stories, and now many of those same people are adults with disposable income and children of their own. This gives Disney a twofold opportunity: sell nostalgia to adults and introduce the same stories to a new generation of kids. This dual market approach significantly expands the potential audience for these remakes. These remakes also carry significantly less creative risk than original stories. One of the most difficult things to do in movies is come up with a beloved character and an attractive storyline. Time and time again, original movies fail to do well either because the main character was not charming or interesting enough, or the storyline did not retain people's attention. This is not a big problem with live-action remakes. Disney already knows the plot works, they already know the characters are beloved, and they already know how the story ends. This means that the company can funnel more of its budget into production quality and marketing rather than story development. It's essentially content recycling, but in a way that maximizes emotional resonance and brand familiarity. These movies also make it easier to reach global audiences. It is not only the US audience that feels a connection to Disney's animated movies. People across the globe share a similar connection because many of them grew up watching these movies as well. This gives Disney a much bigger audience that it can target with a remake. All of this, the brand equity, nostalgia, and global recognition, is something most new movies do not have. It means that these movies don't need long introductions or marketing campaigns trying to convince you they're worth your time. You already trust the characters, you already love the story. So when Disney remakes an old classic, they're not just releasing a new film, they are reigniting a relationship with audiences that started decades ago. And this strategy has been working for the most part. This is a list of Disney's remakes for theatrical release so far. This is how much they reportedly cost to produce, and this is how much these movies brought in worldwide. This is only revenue made from their theatrical release. Movies have more sources of revenue such as merchandise sales and streaming rights, but that is beyond the scope of this video. I will go ahead and remove Mulan and Cruella since they released simultaneously in theaters as well as Disney+, meaning that their box office revenue was expected to be lower. Additionally, Mulan released during COVID-19, so its theatrical coverage was limited to say the least. Okay, now we see that, barring Snow White, which at the time of this writing is still showing in theaters, all of Disney's remakes have brought in more revenue than they cost to make. However, this is not a good indicator to their profitability. See, Disney does not get all the revenue generated in the box office. Ticket sales are shared between the studios, the theaters, and whatever taxes are in place. While actual percentages may depend on the movie, a good way to think about it is that studios earn about 55% of domestic sales and about 40% of international sales. Plus, production budget does not account for marketing costs. Disney spends millions of dollars promoting a movie, and those costs need to come into consideration. Taking all of this into account, a rule of thumb in the movie industry is that a movie needs to make approximately 2.5 times its production budget to break even. If we go by this rule of thumb, we see that Disney has failed to break even on only 5 of its live-action remakes. And if we use the total numbers, we see that Disney's live-action remakes business has been quite successful. This is because its actual blockbusters like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Cinderella, The Jungle Book, and Maleficent have brought in millions in profit. These are also some of Disney's most iconic and well-known classic movies, suggesting that the bigger the original brand, the better its remake will perform. The Little Mermaid and Snow White are the two exceptions to this rule, as they are some of Disney's most popular classic movies, but the remakes have failed to live up to the expectations. However, these were movies that faced a lot of backlash and controversy. All in all, despite fans having mixed feelings and emotions, remaking old movies as live action has been incredibly profitable for Disney, so it is not surprising that the company does not plan to stop. But just because something is profitable doesn't mean it's sustainable. And Disney's reliance on live-action remakes comes with a set of real long-term risks. Let's start with brand fatigue. The more Disney leans on familiar stories, the harder it becomes to surprise audiences. Over time, the novelty of seeing a beloved classic reimagined begins to wear off. And if every new movie feels like something you've already seen, audiences may start tuning out. This doesn't just hurt the remake, it can also dull the emotional magic of the original. Repetition, especially without innovation, can make even the most iconic characters feel tired. Then there's the issue of creative stagnation. Disney was built on innovation. The company's greatest successes came from taking risks. Remakes, by nature, are not risks. They are calculated plays. And while that's good for the short-term bottom line, it can create a culture where new ideas are not prioritized. In the long run, this can limit Disney's ability to build the next generation of iconic characters and stories. In fact, ask yourself this: when was the last time Disney introduced a brand new character that reached the same cultural level as Simba, Ariel, or Belle? This can weaken the long-term value of Disney's crown jewels, and for a company that relies so heavily on brand equity across theme parks, merchandise, and media, that is not a small problem. Because here's the thing. Nostalgia is powerful, but it is not infinite. Eventually, audiences stop showing up just because they recognize the characters. They want to be moved, surprised, and inspired. And while remakes might buy time, they don't build the future. So unless Disney finds a way to balance its reliance on the past with investments in bold, original stories, it could find itself in a very unfamiliar position, being the world's most famous storytelling brand with nothing new to say.